Welcome to Colorado Soul Stories, showcasing changemakers and creatives, past and present, who have helped to make Colorado not just a pretty place to behold, but a soulful place to be. I'm your host, Mama Jill, longtime Colorado resident, former teacher, and freelance journalist. Let's get started with our next episode.
Eventually, it became really, what are the mountains teaching me? What is the wisdom of the mountains? What are they reflecting back to me about my place on Earth, my place in the cosmos? It really enabled me to transcend my own immediate concerns of the day, and it swept me up into this much bigger world, way beyond my own lifetime. Anything that I could possibly conceive of with this little human mind of mine. For that, I am tremendously grateful.
You had a journey. You kind of grew up with the mountains.
I grew up with the mountains. I definitely did.
That is a snippet of the wisdom to come on this next episode, featuring mountaineer and writer Jane Parnell. Climbing all of Colorado's highest peaks, in a way, was just the beginning for Jane. Her vast experiences have provided an insight that is valuable and, quite frankly, very much needed right now. Listen as she shares her close encounters with wildlife, reflects on how our environment is changing, and how, if you let it, the wilderness can be a healing friend to us all. Hi there, this is Colorado Soul Stories, and we're on the road in Fairplay, Colorado. I am here with author, writer, and activist Jane Parnell. We are going to speak in part about a book she published around 2018 called Off Trail, and it is published by University of Oklahoma Press. Welcome, Jane.
Thank you. I'm delighted to speak with you today.
I'm glad you made time for me. We're at a cute little library right by South Park City in an old part of Fairplay here. I want to start off, as we get into your book, that part of it is about how Jane was the first woman to climb the 100 highest peaks in Colorado. And that you finished that in 1981, am I correct?
That's my memory, yeah.
I mean, I think that's in your book.
It's so many years ago, but that would be recorded with the Colorado Mountain Club, and I'm pretty sure that was the year.
Okay, and that's where those things are recorded. So if anybody wants to check on that, that's where you would go to do that. Do they have online resources you can look up? Do you know?
I don't think so, because they have thousands of people who've done all the 54 14ers.
Okay.
And so I don't think they would have the resources to put that all online.
Okay. But we know you were the first woman. And how old were you?
I have been 31.
Just about 31, yeah.
Yeah, 31, 32, which blows my mind because I'm way beyond that now.
Well, I would assume that although there's so many people that climb these 14ers at any age, I would assume, to do that many, you start when you're younger and strong. And
yeah, I was in my mid-20s, really got going on it.
Yeah.
And of course I went on to climb many more mountains than that, like 800 or 900 probably.
Yeah, okay. How did you get into climbing these tall mountains?
Well, I was dating someone who was a very accomplished mountaineer. We met at work at Ford Aerospace in Colorado Springs. I was a clerk typist, typing these mind-numbingly documents, for the military or whatever. And he was an engineer, and he came up to my desk, and that's in the book, and was flirting with me. And as I found out what his interests were, I became quite interested because growing up as a child, my family, I grew up in Kansas City, we went to Rocky Mountain National Park every summer.
Every summer.
Okay. And, my sister and I hiked.
Right.
So I've always loved the mountains from the the youngest memory possible.
Oh, yeah.
Because we could look out from our cabin and we could see Long's Peak, and we could see the diamond, which my sister and father and we all witnessed the first ascent of the diamond back in, I think it was 1960.
Yeah.
And rode up on horseback with a wrangler to a place called I think it's called Storm Pass, for good reason. And we got to watch it for a number of hours through binoculars. And that's also in the book.
Yeah, I remember it.
And that whetted my interest or my appetite. I didn't really know anything about mountain climbing, but I'd had enough of a taste of being outdoors in those environments, in those ecosystems, so that when Carl asked me out, our first date was a 14er.
Oh my gosh, I love it. That's so Colorado.
Yeah, it is so Colorado. It was Mount Sherman.
Okay.
We did not make it.
Oh.
We didn't leave the car till 11 o'clock, I think, in the morning. Way too late for a beginner like me. And he just flew up it. I mean, he was just skipping up the boulders. In those days, the trail wasn't nearly as clear.
Okay.
And I was just at sea and, just exhausted. And so when a lightning bolt hit the ridge above, I was thrilled because that meant it was over. And that was the end of that attempt. But, we kept going out and doing stuff, and we started making summits. He was a good person to learn from.
Absolutely. Very cool history. So you started coming to Colorado as a child, and I know that did you permanently move here when you started going to college?
Yes, I came permanently in 1968. I was what was called then a summer start, and they wouldn't allow women in those days. They were pretty leery of having too many women students on campus in those days.
Oh,
and that wasn't just true of Colorado College.
Because you were distracting or what?
Exactly.
Okay.
We weren't taken seriously and we could be a distraction. So they limited the number. They would accept you, but you had to start in the summer, and then you had to sit out the first semester your freshman year.
Huh, how odd.
On the other hand, the women became really close. Lifelong friendships in some cases.
I didn't know about Colorado College, but I had a boyfriend that went there and learned so much about what a cool place it is. Smaller college and a very different way of doing the classes and semesters.
Yeah, I was there when they came out with the block plan.
That was new, the block plan. Yeah.
Which they kind of changed up as they were experimenting with it and tweaked it. Also with changes in their grading system. But what was wonderful about the block plan is you take one course at a time and you can really immerse yourself. And I'll never forget the geology course. Ooh. 2 blocks, 8 weeks. And he loaded us up in his van, the geology professor, and drove us around the Southwest. Oh. And that furthered my interest in the mountains.
Sure. Yeah, you're really getting into what they're made of and stuff.
Well, that was before the continental plate theory. Yes. Teaching of geology has changed immensely since I took geology.
Wow.
But I kind of, as a rank amateur, have tried to keep up with some of that.
Yeah.
And there's actually a few paragraphs in one of my chapters that references the continental plates.
Okay.
And what it's like to stand on top of a mountain and look out over millions of years of Earth history.
Will you kind of round out your novel, speaking of that, if I recall? Your memoir, your book, one of the last chapters talks about you being at the top and looking at the rocks and then turning around seeing the effects of human farming and city and all that. Yeah.
When we did Long's Peak, and that would have been in the 70s, another one that I was grossly underprepared for, because it's a long haul with a lot of vertical. It was, I think, maybe my first or second summer, and Carl carried most everything in his pack, and in those days it was just a canvas pack.
Right.
And so we made the summit, and looking out, in those days, the pollution wasn't nearly as bad.
Okay.
And the dust and so on, with great increase in population and just more cars and more fossil fuels being emitted and dust blowing around from climate change and, all the traffic. I mean, it would be virtually impossible to see the western Kansas from the top of Long's Peak today.
Anymore.
But in those days, you could on a really clear day. You could see just enough of it. And being from Kansas, that was very thrilling to me.
There's my old home.
Yeah, exactly.
We have a lot in common. I was born in Omaha. I'm not a original resident of Denver, but we came when I was 3. But similar, we were in Kansas City when we moved to Denver, and that was 1968. So we moved to Applewood, and so that was the beginning of my journey in Colorado. But same year, it sounds like that you came for college. Yeah,
I came permanently for college, and then I married, and we settled in Manitou Springs.
Yeah. So we wanted to talk about Manitou too, because Manitou is a very unique little town. Why don't you tell us about where the house was and the history of that?
Well, it was up on top of a cliff overlooking town, and it abutted Pike National Forest. And we began with a smaller number of acres, but Carl eventually was able to expand it with at least one purchase to 10 acres, and it was mostly vertical.
Right. It seems fitting for you.
Yeah, it was. I felt very safe there.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I really did. And I loved walking at night, exploring, the history of the town. It's just visual everywhere.
Right.
You're living it when you walk around town in all sorts of ways. And I was especially intrigued by the Penny Arcade.
Oh, I love that place.
Yeah, I mean, I think that came about in the 1930s, during the Depression, if I'm correct, remembering correctly. And I loved exploring that place and the people who hung out there. And there's the castle, Miramont Montcalm Castle, and Redstone Castle, and these sort of grandiose expressions of the extreme wealth and privilege that came west, surrounded by more modest hardscrabble housing.
I love the combination of all that.
I do too, because you're seeing it all
of it.
Yeah, exactly, the mixture.
That's what I prefer, rather than divide everybody up. Any interaction with the fountains there, the springs. So that's part of.
Oh yeah, that's how I made my lemonade. I'd go down there with an empty milk gallon, carton, and I'd fill it up with that water and then make lemonade out of it. And a lot of people did that.
Oh,
and I'm sure they still do. I don't see why they wouldn't.
There's fountains all over Manitou that are very old, from the underground springs.
Yeah, the mineral springs.
Yeah. And that Penny Arcade, again, if you haven't been to it, has arcade games from like Depression era, maybe even
it's
before that.
It's the history of the whole thing,
right?
Really.
Yeah.
Last time I went down there, I took pictures to show the eras.
Oh,
yeah. And I use one of the machines there as a metaphor at the end of one of my chapters.
Okay. I don't remember that. I'll have to look it up.
I forget, it was Houdini, the magician. And I won't spoil, for those of you who would like to read the book, I won't spoil how I used it, but that's in the book too.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I used to take my son there, and we'd just load up with pennies and nickels, and so you can still play a lot of those games. It's a really cool place. So tell us about the history of the house you lived in.
Well, that was fascinating, and it was kind of perfect given the circumstances. It was, we think, a bordello that possibly, because when Carl looked up the records, the historic records, I think it was called the Pikes Peak Journal, he would look up back issues of that, and he found something about the house. Something about the fact that she didn't have to pay property taxes. Ida Clothier, she didn't have to pay property taxes because of the services that she was providing politicians in the area.
Under the guise of like a home for young girls or something?
We believed that it was a TB sanatorium originally.
Okay.
And then it became this other boarding house of suspect morality.
Okay. There's a lot of parts of Colorado that have
That's
that
right.
history of
Yeah.
just a little home for girls. That's all it is. So back to your climbing experience. You started a lifelong endeavor of doing that for quite a while.
Oh yeah. I mean, I still do peaks, just much easier. I limit the mileage and the elevation gains.
Okay.
And I don't scramble anymore, and I don't like to do sustained, really steep. It's just too hard on my arthritic back, and I've got 2 artificial joints, and all of that, all of those things that accompany a life of a lot of exercise.
A lot of exercise, enjoying the outdoors, having goals to go up these peaks. I mean, some people have never been up them. I think of it as a kind of a rite of passage when you're from Colorado to at least climb one.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was truly a rite of passage. It really helped me heal from a trauma that occurred in Colorado Springs, because I got in touch with my body, and it became stronger, and I became more alert and balanced and aware, and all the things that I learned and acquired over those years of intense peak bagging really helped me renew my relationship with my body.
Yeah.
And it was extremely healing in that way. And also, when I was younger, I enjoyed the competition too.
Okay, yeah.
I really did. But as I aged, how I went about mountaineering and my relationship with the mountains shifted with how I was shifting.
Okay.
And eventually, and I go into that in some depth in the last chapter, eventually it became really one of the, what are the mountains teaching me? What is the wisdom of the mountains? What are they reflecting back to me about my place on earth, my place in the cosmos? And it really enabled me to transcend my own immediate concerns of the day. And it swept me up into this much bigger world, way beyond my own lifetime, anything that I could possibly conceive of with this little human mind of mine.
Yeah.
And for that, I am tremendously grateful.
You had a journey. You kind of grew up with the mountains.
I grew up with the mountains. I
You
definitely
know.
did. I evolved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely did.
And that moves into your activism. I just want to comment. So we both wrote books about our lives. Mine mentions being in the wilderness, but it's not what it's all about. But I do talk about feeling a possessiveness about certain natural areas, or even just the foothills that I looked at every day when I was a little girl, because we lived right at the bottom of the Front Range, and there were North Table and South Table, and I would sit there and eat my breakfast and look at them and imagine a giant eating his breakfast at that table of a mountain. I talk about them becoming my friends, and then later when I was old enough to play on them alone, I would be on the top and then look down where I had been in the house. And as time goes on and things change a lot, I feel this, maybe not possession, but a deep need to protect them, I guess, which is also part of why I'm gathering stories to help protect some of our history and illuminate for people some of the grandeur that you might not see if you don't get up in the deep mountains, you know. Can you speak to that feeling? You used the word possessing by caring.
Right. I mean, initially, when I started to get into the peak bagging part of it and accumulating numbers and all of that, it really felt like I was possessed by them. But again, that shifted.
Yeah.
But out of that emerged this sense of responsibility to give back what they had given me over most of my adulthood. I'm 74 now.
Oh, yeah.
And I started climbing at age 22, 23, in that range. So it's over 50 years.
Yeah.
And I know I owe a tremendous debt to those mountains.
Yeah.
And I mean every one of the 7 ranges in our state is precious and unique in its own way and well worth taking care of and preserving. And it's not just the mountains, it's the wildlife, it's the wildflowers, and everything, that lives there. And all are endangered by, the rock probably isn't, but everything else is endangered by climate change. So I've written a lot about that. And now, with the current administration, that sense of responsibility has become very acute.
Yeah.
And I'm becoming even more active than I was before, because I feel like my experiences give me the credibility to speak on behalf of the natural world. And I don't really see that much of a distinction between humans and the natural world.
Right.
I don't make that separation.
Right, yeah.
I mean, we all evolved together.
Yeah.
We all share the same air, and in many cases, water. We all need certain things to live.
And in fact, we probably need those wild places more than it needs us. I mean, it needs us to take care of them.
It needs us to take care of it.
Yeah.
Right, because we are the species that has by far the most impact on the earth. And so I've always been aware of that, really even as a child.
Yeah.
I couldn't have articulated it, but as I've aged, it's just become so clear to me how important it is for anyone who's out in the outdoors. I mean, maybe you're cycling or backpacking or fishing or whatever. We all need to take responsibility to take care of it and to defend our land. Our mantra for the rally this Saturday that I helped to organize up on Hoosier Pass is from the song, "This land is our land."
Oh, yeah.
And it really goes further than that.
Yeah.
We don't own it. We're just caretakers. While we're alive on earth, we're caretakers. And I hope everyone who hears that thinks about that. How can I contribute to that? What can I do?
We all have the power to help with that in little ways, even just little ways.
Very little ways. Yeah.
Why don't you, and we can talk about what the little ways can be, but to go back to your rally, do you want to reflect on what's endangered right now and how?
Absolutely. I mean, it keeps changing, but I think the bottom line is, because I've been following these stories very closely from day one, the agenda is to dissemble all of it. And in a variety of ways. One would be the people who were named to the public land management agencies, ranging from the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Agriculture to the Department of Interior, the U.S. Forest Service. All of them have people in charge who were put there to carry out the agenda of privatization and handing over our beautiful, precious heritage that millions of people around the world admire and come to see. Handing it over to the fossil fuel industry for unmonitored and barely regulated extractive mining, clear cutting, and development.
Yeah.
And they're attempting this in many ways. Regardless of what happened, keep in mind that administratively they can do a lot, and they already are, through firings and a huge budget cut to the National Park Service and the U.S. Forest Service at a time when every state in the West is at much greater risk than before of catastrophic wildfires. And we've certainly seen it almost year-round in California, and Colorado is experiencing more and more of it too.
Oh, yeah.
And that risk is not going away. It's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. And so it's like, they're pulling the rug out from under us. Another way, well, they're doing it through budget cuts, huge budget cuts, downsizing staffing. Also getting rid of grants and research grants for the U.S. Forest Service to hire qualified contractors to help with wildfire mitigation in vulnerable areas of their land, near populated areas.
Right. Yeah.
And they're doing it through the land-grant university system. There's one land-grant university in every state in the country, and most, if possibly all of them, have forestry departments. They've done an enormous amount of research, especially out west, to help their states. How do we deal with climate change? How do we reduce the risk of these catastrophic wildfires? Well, those grants are gone, and the research is, dwindled to nothing. And we rely on that more than anything because they learn new things all the time.
I've heard a lot about how to fire mitigate in an efficient way. We've got a friend in Salida, Joe Stone, who does a lot of research on that as well and writes about it, where some of the mitigation is more hurtful than helpful, it sounds like.
Right. Some of it has been more damaging,
They
and actually it can actually really dehydrate the soils and all kinds of stuff even further. And what they're discovering is that you've got to be selective. In other words, you have to apply methods that work for that particular dominant tree species in the forest, like Doug fir would be different than ponderosa and so on. And there's a lot more that goes into it than they originally thought.
Yeah.
And to make it even worse, the threat, this claim of how clear-cutting all these millions of acres of BLM lands and Forest Service lands is going to mitigate wildfires. No, it is not, because you have to have qualified people with the right equipment and training to do it. Otherwise, they could create a situation much worse than was there before. And I remember back in the 60s and 70s when I drove up over Wolf Creek Pass, and there was a lot of clear cutting in those days. You'd walk 10, 15 feet off that highway, and the entire forest was gone. You would look out miles in one side of the highway, go across the other sideway, and look the other direction. The trees are all gone.
It's shocking when you see that.
Right, because they don't, the Forest Service doesn't have the resources to supervise all of that. And, they would leave enough trees in place along roads to deceive people into thinking they weren't taking everything, when in fact they were. It's important to keep our forest history after many years of fire suppression, because that paved the way for a huge buildup of fuel, which is contributing to the size and the heat of our fires today. Right. But I can tell you what the administration and the public land managers are claiming about, the logging, that it's going to help with wildfires. I don't believe it for a minute, not 1 minute.
It doesn't have the research behind it.
They don't have the research, the training, the knowledge. Yeah. All they have is the financial incentive to take everything. We now have 10 times the number of lodge poles per acre than we did initially 100 years ago. If you look at a lodgepole pine forest, it's just full of disease, right? And a beetle kill. And thinning for sure, and opening up canopies in appropriate places. Okay. But again, if you really want to know more about that, Colorado State University, and the one doctoral student I met who was doing a very original project up on Hoosier Pass, he was from India. And I met him about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and I wonder, has he been deported? I don't know.
Right.
But the research grants are going away, so how are they going to be able to continue that?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It is important that we all are educated about this, so we know how to respond to these cuts these budget cuts that help take care of our wild lands. Maybe some people don't understand how fossil fuel drilling can affect a wild area. Do you want to kind of illustrate
our wildlife
that?
habitat is already, fragmented, and they have way less than when I moved here in 1968. Yeah. I can tell you stories about herds of hundreds of elk that I saw on a mesa down in the San Juan Mountains back in the 70s and early 80s. Yeah. I mean, South Park had way more wildlife.
Okay.
And between the number of vehicles on the roads today, I mean, we lose over 1.5 million wildlife per year to vehicles.
Really?
Yeah, it's one of the number one killers. The second would be barbed wire fences. A lot of them die on those fences because they don't clear them completely, and they die horribly. But the big thing too is loss of habitat from. Is it 40% of people in Colorado now live in the wildlife interface? Yeah. They don't live in cities and towns. They live in the woods and the mountains, and we've lost a lot of habitat that way. And the migration routes, they're cut off by expanding housing developments. They're cut off by just, bumper-to-bumper traffic. And around here, around Fairplay, we're surrounded by giant gravel mines. When I first moved here, you couldn't even hardly detect them. Now, that's all you see on 3 sides of Fairplay. Yeah. And between Fairplay and Alma, it's just giant gravel operations. And that has encroached on wildlife habitat and cut off migration routes. And they have to find new ones. And if you drive from Fairplay to Hartselle and then on to Colorado Springs, as you leave Fairplay, you will drive by an enormous operation that goes on for miles.
Yeah, I've driven by it.
Yeah,
it's
and that
dusty.
used to be, back in the 70s and 80s, I saw lots of elk grazing in there in the wintertime.
Right.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
Way more elk than I see today.
They've definitely been displaced. That's what I have noticed living along the Front Range is suddenly the elk's down there in the open space areas. When you've lived here for a long time, you notice those things.
You notice those things for sure. I bet lots of people who hear your podcast can contribute stories.
Hello. We're going to take a quick pause to hear from one of our sponsors.
Every year, Americans generate 1,700 pounds of trash per person. That's the equivalent of 50 garbage trucks full every single minute. And did you know that every single piece of plastic ever made still exists today, and it all eventually breaks down into microplastics that enter our bodies and affect our health? Ew! But what if you could cut your plastic waste by 60% overnight, just by changing where you shop for groceries? Welcome to Nude Foods Market, where we make plastic-free grocery shopping convenient, easy, joyful, and local. We're just like a regular grocery store in that we have everything from produce, snacks, meat and fresh bread, to home care, body care, and ready-made meals. In fact, like a regular grocery store, you just grab items from the shelf that are already packaged. The difference is that this packaging is reusable. So instead of dumping your food packaging into landfill when you're done with it, you bring it back to us to be reused hundreds more times. And that's not all. We have the highest sourcing standards of any grocery store in the US, so when you shop with us, you can relax, safe in the knowledge that we've done all the research and worrying, so you don't have to. We source 42% of our products locally, visit every farm that we partner with, and keep abreast of cutting-edge research. Find us at 33rd and Walnut in Boulder, or at 44th and Lowell in Denver. We're open every day from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., and you can also order online at nudefoodsmarket.com or on Instacart. We'd love you to see for yourself, so we're giving you $10 off your first shop. Go to nudefoodsmarket.com/COSOUL to get your coupon. You can redeem it in-store or order zero-waste groceries online for delivery in the Boulder, Denver metro area. We're locally owned, women-owned, and working hard to fix our broken food system. So we really hope you can pop in and check us out soon.
And I do feel like it's important for newer residents just to be aware that our wildlands have been compromised, our cities have been compromised too, just because the sheer number that have come in so quickly, I guess, in a short amount of time, it seems
Right.
like to me. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was like 1955. We drove through Denver. I think it was like 60,000 people.
Yeah, a lot less.
And when I came to Colorado College in 1968, in Colorado Springs, I believe it was 40,000 people.
Yeah.
And it's now well over 500,000, and the county is inching closer and closer to 1 million. And Denver, what is it now, 3.5 million?
Yeah, I believe
Yeah.
that sounds right.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were here 10 years later and just seeing it change in front of my eyes almost, especially the last 10 years. And most of the people I have interviewed have lived here for a long time, and we all kind of commiserate that way. And there's no individual to blame, of course. If
No.
you've moved here, of course, you're welcome. But perhaps carry on with the knowledge of do tread lightly in our wildlands. We've had people swimming in lakes they shouldn't swim in and not picking up the dog poop and not picking up their trash. And
Well, the biggest thing, I think, are the untended campfires.
yeah.
I mean, last June, my partner and I and Larry, we hike this area a lot. It's a trail on the south side of Twin Lakes.
Okay.
And it goes to this beautiful old historic hotel that's been renovated. I mean, it's not in use, but it's a wonderful historic site. And somebody was backpacking the Colorado Trail, and they walked away in the morning and left the fire still going.
Oh, no.
This happens a lot. And there's an area here in Fairplay called Beaver Creek, and a lot of us like to hike up in there. And I have personally put out, I don't know, maybe half a dozen campfires over the years.
I guess they need to put more signs up. I mean, I tell this story frequently. We were in Vermont for a family reunion a couple of years ago, and it's different climate there, and they do leave their fires. I still don't think it's a good idea, but it's very wet and mossy, but that's a big no-no here.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can end up in jail, and it's I think a $1,500 fine, and you can end up. I mean, if you'll remember the Ranger and the Hayman fire in the Terreals, was that 94?
Yeah,
I'm trying to
somewhere
remember.
mid-90s.
That was recklessness. She was burning some letters in a campfire, and she started the Hayman fire, and she ended up in prison. And she served her time, and hopefully she's gone on and doing well. But the point is, if you do something reckless that starts a forest fire, you are liable for the consequences.
Yeah.
So that's just a reminder right now in the summer, especially when we have lots of people, tourists from out of state and front rangers coming up.
Right.
So
Yeah. Okay. Put your fire out. Dead out, they call it. Not any ember. Cover it with dirt.
yeah, if you Google it, you'll see. You'll
Google
see
anything.
it's not difficult. It'll take you a couple of minutes, but you've got to make sure it's covered properly and completely out before you vacate
Completely out.
your campsite.
Oh my God. Well, so I appreciate the work that you are doing, a seemingly small thing, but very important thing that you can do. I mentioned pick up your trash. We used to say the term pack it in, pack it out. What other little things can an average person do?
Well, a new one, relatively new, would be drones. And I first encountered that hiking up in the it's a wilderness area near Aspen, and you're not supposed to do anything like that in wilderness areas. And this family let loose this drone flying overhead, and it wasn't just the very loud noise, but people were up at this lake, sitting quietly, communing with nature and so on. And it's hard on the wildlife, those loud
Oh my gosh,
noises,
yeah.
and it can be dangerous because there's lots of people around. So what if a drone hits somebody? You know,
Oh my gosh.
if you're going to use drones, use them legally in legal ways and be responsible about it.
Yeah.
and think about the impact not only on people but wildlife.
Yeah, they can hear it too.
Yeah, and dogs off leashes. I mean, I leash my dog. We lose a ton of ptarmigan, pika, and marmots to dogs.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Tons of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be responsible with your dog.
Yeah.
When I'm recreating, run into a lot of hikers and even mountain bikers that have earbuds in, which I don't understand. To me, you're there to experience being outside. So for me, that's a no-no also because you can't hear a possible animal predator or a person behind you.
And the other thing I've noticed, and I'm not criticizing people for doing it, I understand why they do, but what I notice, at least at my age, it's a lot easier to trip when you've got those things in because you're distracted.
You're distracted.
I need all my senses
Me
to
too.
hike safely.
Yeah.
And our trails are really eroded and lots of rocks and boulders and logs, and so I would advise everyone have all your senses
All of them.
available to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. And yes, not trying to cut anybody down, but put it out there, this awareness that those little things are important. Absolutely. So how else are you activating to help save our wildlands?
Well, my second book that I'm working on, I'm actually working on two, and they may not get published because of what happened to the National Endowment for the Humanities, but it's still a good exercise. But my second book focuses a lot more on climate change, and it's set in this area where I live. And the opening chapter is a scene of me in one of my first nights in my home in Fairplay, which is a very different experience than anywhere else I've lived. You are in the weather around here.
In the weather?
Night. Yeah, and when you have lightning storms or hailstorms, it sounds like you're right in them because we're almost at 10,000 feet here.
Oh, right. I forget about the high plains. I was going to ask you how you got to Fairplay. How did you?
Well, it's interesting. I still had my rental house, which I left behind when I went to Utah for 18 years, and I rented out because I thought I would move back.
In Manitou?
No, in Old Colorado City.
Oh, okay, another cute town. Yeah.
And it was a great house, but I realized as an older woman, and I have some vision issues and other things, that it would be better for me to live a lot closer to where I like to recreate, to ski and to hike.
Yeah.
Because I don't drive at night anymore.
Yeah.
And so I found this foreclosed home in Fairplay during the Great Recession.
Okay.
I could barely afford it.
But you got it.
I got the house and not quite realizing what I was in for. That's in my second book.
Okay.
And so when we get tremendous wind here, like hurricane force wind. And so I have a whole chapter at the front end of the book about night terrors, what it's like to have this windstorm come up in the middle of the night, and you feel like you're in the middle of the opening of Wizard of Oz, and your house is going to get blown apart and lifted right up into the sky. It's a metaphor.
Sure.
It's a metaphor for the chaos, the fear, the anxiety of living with climate change.
Yeah.
And so that's how I introduce the subject of climate change. And so I weave that in, through the book, and I haven't finished it. I find the violence of the weather around here to be quite invigorating.
Sure.
And it can be terrifying too, obviously. And it's harder to deal with in my 70s than it would have been in my 20s and 30s.
Oh, yeah.
I loved it then.
Okay.
But now there are times when I'm just like, no, I don't think I want to go outside.
Yeah. Can be very severe. Yeah.
Yeah, but it just is a constant reminder of what is beyond my little short, brief blip of a lifetime. There are all these forces at work. We don't have any control over them, right?
Right.
And the more we can acknowledge that, the easier it is to accept our responsibilities as caretakers.
I would hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. And it really helps us acknowledge our humble place on the planet. And there's something really beautiful about that, being able to do that.
Yeah.
It brings me a great deal of peace and comfort to understand that.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. The older I've gotten, the more, I don't know, I guess it's just that awareness and that having that beauty of having stayed in one area for a while and the privilege of being able to watch it grow and change, even though some of the changes are not healthy for it, but the privilege to be able to try to help take care of it.
Yeah. And it can be, those changes can be very painful.
Oh, yeah.
But in some cases they're inevitable, and other cases they may not be.
Right.
You know, we make choices all the time in how we live our individual lives and how we vote,
Oh, yeah.
how we just show up in our lives.
Yeah.
And how much
Absolutely.
awareness we bring every time we go out to whatever activity we're engaging in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I feel so blessed. I feel like one of the luckiest people on the planet for the life I've led.
Oh.
Because how many people get to experience what I do?
Right.
How many people can say they sat on a boulder up on a ridge at 13,000 feet meditating, and a herd of Rocky Mountain sheep come over, you know, the males first, because they're protecting the females and the newborns, and gradually, one by one, they encircle you, and then the mothers come over, and then they bring over, you know, their newborns, a whole circle.
Wow.
I was completely surrounded by them, and they're just standing there watching me.
Oh my gosh.
And I believe, I can't prove it, I could be wrong, I believe it is the energy that I brought to
Yeah.
that spot, that I'm not here to hurt you.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here in silence. I'm sitting here quietly, without moving very much, sharing your territory with you.
Yeah.
And I mean no harm to you. And I just sense they pick up on that.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
I
And I've
mean-
had other encounters like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So that alone is like a lifetime
Absolutely.
scrapbook, you know, on my deathbed, unless it's an instantaneous death. You know, those memories could serve me really well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. Please write about those, because that just gave me chills and made me want to go meditate on a rock and see what happens. I have had, like, in the wilderness, far up, backpacking, animals, you know, approach us because we were being non-threatening, I suppose, and quiet and just doing our own thing. And, but nothing quite like that. That's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, and this happened to me in Utah, but I was hiking down Mount Timpanogos, which is the highest peak in the Wasatch Front. Okay. It's 11,000 and something. The hike starts at a much lower elevation because Salt Lake City and, you know, areas in that valley, you know, they're at around 4,000, 4,500 feet. So it's a pretty good
Much
haul
longer,
getting up there.
yeah.
And they have a lot of moose. And on the way down, there was a mama moose and her two calves. And there was a large group of what looked like an LDS group of young people.
Oh.
And they were standing in the trail, and they were terrified, understandably, right? And they didn't know what to do. Well, I got out in front of them, and I started chanting. And there was a chant that I learned from the Thich Nhat Hanh
Oh, cool.
Buddhist group, and he's dead now. But anyway, I started chanting. And I don't know this had anything to do with it, but the big mother moose looked at me, and then she turned around and just walked away from the trail, and her calves followed her, and she kind of stood far enough off the trail that I decided to start walking, and the young people followed me.
Yeah.
And you know, we walked right past. Well, you know, that can be a very dangerous encounter, because when they're that young, the calves, you know, it's the mother's job to eliminate all threats.
Yeah.
And it can be quite hazardous to humans. And nothing happened. And again, I don't know what happened really. All I know is that we just walked past and it was fine.
Yeah.
And I remember afterwards, some of the young people came up to me and said, "What just happened?" And they were just all looking at me in wonder. And I'm not any smarter or, more with it than anybody else. I was just using my Buddhist background and training in a way that I thought would help calm the situation.
Wow.
And it worked in that circumstance.
Sure did.
Yeah.
Well, and that is another reminder, don't approach the moose.
Yeah, don't approach them.
Leave them alone.
No, leave them alone. They are much bigger than you are, and you would not believe how fast they charge.
Yeah.
You've ever seen it?
No. Have you seen that?
I have seen it at a distance, like, when I'm hiking up Sacramento Gulch and places like that, because I hike a lot in the mosquito rains. I've probably done every one of these peaks 15 times each.
Neat.
And I see a lot of moose up there, and I've seen them charging, but not humans.
Okay.
They might be charging for some other reason.
Wow.
And the same thing with bears.
Yeah.
Their velocity, and they can really accelerate. I had a friend up in Oregon who got chased. She had cubs, little ones, and he didn't know they were there, and he got between them accidentally. He was running on a trail in Oregon. And she chased him up a tree, and he was at the top of that tree all night long.
Boy.
In his running clothes,
Right.
shivering
Oh, my goodness.
all night long until the wind shifted and she left.
Wow. Oh, my gosh.
And she stretched out on her hind paws, her full length, and was shaking the tree and the
Wow.
limbs for a couple of hours,
Oh, boy.
trying to knock him out of the tree.
See? I suppose, I don't know. So my husband lived up Cheyenne Canyon when I met him. And he would not always tell me, but bears would come visit. I finally saw one when I was mountain biking one day, and we just went the other way, But he would always be so casual about it. And perhaps those particular bears that dwelled amongst, maybe they know better, or they're going to be more scared of us. I don't know, but I'm not going to test that.
Yeah. Yeah, I sure wouldn't.
Right.
I mean, I've seen a number of bears in the backcountry, and I've never had a problem with them. But that's not saying that would always be the case.
Yeah. Well, you're not approaching them or trying to take a picture of them, or
Right. And the big mamas with the cubs, back off.
back off. If any of them have their babies with them, yeah.
Yeah.
Back off. Yeah. Good common sense there. Yeah. Wow, I'm so impressed. I'm looking forward to your next book coming out. Would it be the same publisher? Are they?
Well, I don't know what happened with all the cuts to National Endowment
cuts.
for Humanities. All these universities that have publishing, and they depend a great deal on the National Endowment for Humanities, their grants.
Okay.
So that's another consequence of this administration that I feel very sad about.
Yeah, me too. It's hitting all the good things, it feels like, unfortunately. Well, Jane, it's been a pleasure to speak with you. I'm so happy to meet you again. We actually met at a local author event last year in Buena Vista.
It was great.
Yeah, I got her book and read it, and then when I decided to do the podcast, I'm like, I'm going to hit her up and see if she'd like to talk. So,
Well, and your book is well worth reading too.
Thank you.
So we found out we have a lot in common, a lot of similar interests.
Yeah,
So.
both Colorado girls that care.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah. Well, you definitely contribute to the good soul of Colorado.
Thank you
and
for saying that.
You are welcome. Well, thank you all, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Jane.
Thank you.